To je jedno, kde ja budem, hej? So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our on-site and also the online session. Because we are right now streaming online for members of INOVATE members and also for Enterprise Europe Network. So hello everyone. So welcome to our webinar with Mastering the Venture Transition with Christian Kumar as our keynote speaker. So right now just only a few organizational notes. That we are starting at 10 right now. Will be at end of the first block at 11. At the end of the block will be also the time for the answers for the questions for the Christian, because you can see the QR code for the Slido where we will be receiving your question. After 11 will be 10 minutes break, and there will be a second block till 12:15. So right now, without hesitation, so please welcome to Christian Kumar, and stage is yours.
Nothing like starting with a spilled cup of coffee, huh? Welcome everyone, and we're going to have a bit of fun today, right? Because these webinars are very boring and they tend to be one way. So we have this beautiful tech called Slido, which I've just logged into. So we're encouraging everyone to ask questions. Just ask them, no matter how silly they are, how long it takes me to tie a bow tie, whatever question you have, put it there, we will get through it. So this is clicking. So where are we in the world? We are trying to innovate, we are trying to grow. We are facing challenges. The first challenge was COVID back in 2020. Now, most people have forgotten about COVID, but the long-term impact of COVID is still with us today. We have contraction in the venture capital market. We have wars. It's hard to say wars in plural, but each of these incidents around the world create a direct impact to our innovators around Europe. So today I'm going to talk about some good stuff, some bad stuff, and then how to fix the problems moving forward. A little bit about me to start with. So I have a hashtag, it's called Bowtie Travels. And you'll notice that's a fraud. That's AI, someone took the bow tie off. I'm just kidding. So I'm not a technology innovator. I'm a mathematician. That means I'm the most boring person on the planet. The only people more boring than mathematicians are accountants. Because nowhere do you go networking and you say, what do you do? He says, I'm an accountant. That's the end of that conversation, right? The only person worse than that, are you ready? Funeral directors. I mean, there's nothing follows after, yes, I bury bodies. I'm a mathematician. I was born in England. I was raised in the US. I did all my teenage years in Oklahoma in high school. I did a maths degree at Northeastern University, and I went to work for Merrill Lynch. Merrill Lynch is a little bank, employs about 100,000 people. And if you counted their size as a country, it would be in one of the top 20 countries in the world. And this is the impact that American banking, overseas banking has had on innovation. What we've seen is countries with higher banking infrastructure have innovated better. And that's not because of talent, that's because of capital. So we'll talk a little bit about how transitioning from an innovative-led to a corporate-led environment will grow enterprises across our Central European region. And I say our Central European region. I've been working in the region since 2018. Anyway, back to where I am. You'll find that these slides are absolutely useless. And this is why I told Michael, send them to everybody, because there's nothing in there that I've ever followed. I became an entrepreneur after 15 years in the banking sector, more by accident than design. So I had bought an apartment in London. My landlady said she's going to sell the property, and I was stuck. I just left my job at Merrill Lynch. I just moved to the UK, and I didn't have a job. but I was able to get a ninja mortgage. Now, some of you old enough to remember this. This is what created the credit crisis. I got into the world of investment management and financial services, and it was my first startup. That startup grew to 800 staff and 4.5 billion of assets under management using a formulaic approach. Now, if you come to one of the further workshops, and I'm hoping with INOVIA we'll have some of these as we move forward, I will teach you about unit economic modeling, how to scale using mathematical formulas. I don't have any other skills. The only skills I have is that of maths. I exited that business in March of 2008. Important date, because 4 months later, Lehman Brothers said, I think we have a small issue with our accounting. Really? Yeah, just a little. We've got to adjust a number here, a number there, and all of a sudden, governments had to get involved, insurance companies had to get involved. The United Kingdom's government bailed out the Royal Bank of Scotland. The part that we don't understand is that if the Royal Bank of Scotland were not bailed out in 2010, we'd still be in the Great Depression, a second version of it. The Royal Bank of Scotland at the time were the 5th largest banking organization in the world. So again, governments overlaying bailouts. Now, I could teach you hundreds of lessons on history and financial services about the history of venture capital, and we can do that at another time. Today, you want to know about innovation. Right, so I have done since then 4 other major exits. I invested in 16 companies from 2008 to 18. 2008, I retired. 2018, I retired. 2022, I retired. And you'll see this keep happening. I will wake up in January and say, that's it, I'm not working this year. And by the middle of January, I've booked 19 appointments throughout the year. This is my 12th overseas trip so far. Last year, I did 32 trips, and my passport's actually full. Where I found an application of my skill sets was in something we call venture building. Is how do you take an idea, turn it into a concept, and that's what incubators do, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. But then how do you scale it? How do you create enterprise value? And that's what we do today. We have our own lab in London, and we build medical technology ventures. But we also plug into other people's ecosystems and support them because we have to innovate together. We are one large region. Also, we have started supporting venture capital firms. So I've become what's traditionally known as an LP, an investor in other people's VCs. This way, my attention stayed with the company rather than with the investment. And it allowed me to keep a duty of care to the founder rather than to the investor. But what it also allowed me to do is understand how the venture capital market moves. So that's a little bit of an introduction. I think we said an hour for the first part. It might go to 2 hours, it might go to 3. Right, here's our region. The word CE4. Dominic said yesterday it's also called something else. It's 4 regions. I picked Poland, Hungary, Czech, Slovakia. And you look at the innovation marketplaces in these countries, and what we're finding is Bratislava, big city, full of young, innovative people, lags behind Czech Republic. What surprised me the most is Poland, with their 3 million population, lags behind Prague. Now, this is not indicative of these 4 countries. This is indicative of the entire region. If you start from the Baltics and go down to the Balkans, we are not innovating like the Americans do, like the Chinese do, and latterly, like the Indian states do. What we have to do is have a more cohesive development program amongst all the smaller nations. There is no reason why a founder in Žilina today couldn't be tomorrow's unicorn. Part of our role as an ecosystem is not just to build businesses for founders, but it's to build the founders. If you come to my office in the UK, you'll see a big sticker, not dissimilar to the one on the wall here, and it says, "We don't build companies, we build people." People build companies. This is a people business. This is a motivational business. This is getting people excited about being a founder, giving them the tools and the kits to be able to grow an enterprise. Secondary issue, money. Nothing works without money. Unfortunately, it is the fuel that powers innovation. It is the fuel that powers business. One of the things I was asked to talk about today was how do we reduce our dependency on state capital, grant funding, to actually grow businesses to an enterprise level. It is not the state or the government's job to build businesses, it's our job. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I'm going to start a business today and the government of Slovakia is going to pay for it. That's not their job, right? Why should it be? Their job is to tax you for the success. So when you think of the different scales of funding, one of the things I've been doing, especially in the medical tech world, is trying to get away from these terms pre-seed, seed, post-seed, pre-A, A. Do you know what that means to me? Dilution 1, dilution 2, dilution 3, dilution 4, and dilution 5. By the time you get to any sustainable growth, the founder has so little of the company that the next VC that comes along is going, well, hold on a minute, sir. You have 17% of your company left. So why should I invest in you? If something goes wrong, in England we call it the proverbial shit hitting the fan, then will you stay or will you go? And this is the big problem. So at the early stages in the smaller countries, you've got small balanced venture capitalists who are essentially destroying the growth strategy of the founders that are putting their blood, sweat, and tears into their companies. And this is why. A pre-seed early stage round, 300 to 800,000, maybe. Seed, 1 to 2 million. Series A, 2 to 5. Now, Loggerhead, small VC in Greece, funded through the European Investment Bank. Their seed rounds are 250,000. They look at Series A at $1 million, $1.5 million. This is what the rest of the world looks at. I have to talk about the UK because otherwise I don't know what I would do. Right. Average funded company is 1 million at start, right? Seed rounds, 3 to 4 million. Do you see where we're going here? So we have de-risked technology with 2, 3, 4 million pounds versus 300,000 euros. What happens is a company in Central Europe today has to have multiple small rounds to get to any form of scale. And it's because the VCs don't talk to each other. It's also that the European Investment Bank don't allow state-backed venture capitalists or public-funded venture capitalists to invest cross-border, where private sector, family offices, angel investors, they will syndicate. This is the next growth sector for us, is to allow the VCs to syndicate. So there's a big meeting at the European Investment Fund in October, and I suggest that INOVIA, along with other partners, attend. And I will give you the ammunition of what to talk about. So that's coming up in October. When you get to scale, historically, companies look at the US, right? Why? They think it's a great big market. You know what it is? It is 50 great big markets. You go in there with your proof of concept and your prototype and you think, I'm going to crack the US. Not only are you competing with 300 million people that are also innovating, that also have access to capital, also have access to local markets, local knowledge, but you could spend 10 million marketing a product with minimal margin and not achieve any scale. And this is especially right for medical tech devices. So if you're in the medical tech world, we have the European Medicines Agency, 27 countries, one set of rules. We have the outlier, the MHRA. One country decided to leave the European Union. Most stupid mistake we've ever made. So we have 2 regulatory marketplaces, 28 countries. If you counted Ukraine, Turkey, Switzerland, and Norway, 700 million people, 27 trillion in GDP. Now where's the biggest market? It's within a 2-hour flight from here. So our ambitions are scaled wrongly. We need to direct more of our sales and growth locally. And we'll get onto that in the second part of the session today. So these are some of the problems. There's a lack of gradient depth in venture capital. Because not only are the VCs not talking to each other, they don't necessarily have the requisite experience to build an enterprise. What they do have the requisite experience to do is learn how to file a bunch of EU form documents to raise small balance capital and match it with state funding. They've not learned how to invest. They've not learned how to mentor a company. Their models are very similar. I'll put 300,000 euros into a company today in Žilina. We will mentor it for a couple of years. We will grow it, perhaps do a follow-on round of 500,000. Now we're 800 into this, and we'll package it up and take it to Germany. And Germany will pay us back, and we'll recycle the money. Guess what a VC will never do? It's very simple. A VC will never take out another one. You have to show sustained growth. And that now falls on the founders and the ecosystems to be able to teach these companies how to do that. You guys can read the rest of this if you like. What's holding us back? It's not innovation. It's not early stage incubators and accelerators. There are plenty of those. 2005 was the first organized incubator, Y Combinator. I'm sure you've heard of it, right? It was started by Sequoia. Sequoia, one of the world's largest venture capital firms. Why? You're from Slovakia, so you guys understand basketball. So you have the NBA in the US, right? Great big organization, a lot of tall people throwing around a little ball. I love basketball because, as you can tell, at 1.67 meters, I played point guard for the New York Knicks. I owned a basketball team for 10 years, right? And under the European rules, we're allowed to have 4 American players, right? And where did they come from? They came from the NBA's D-League, the development league. This is what incubators were. They were funded by VCs and said, look, you're not ready for $1 million, $2 million, £3 million seed round, but go here. And they funded the growth and development of those smaller companies to get them ready for a larger scale. It was VC backed. Today, I won't ask you, I'll tell you, there are 10,000 incubators and accelerators, right? All around the world. It's gone from being supported by venture capitalists and people that are interested in developing tech to academics, schools, universities, states. They have to tick boxes. Yes, we innovate because we're Czech, or we innovate because we're Poland. Did you know Poland doesn't innovate? Poland ranks 24, even though it's a $1 trillion economy now. Poland's growth has not been because of innovation, it's been because of infrastructure. A lot of Central Europe, it's because of infrastructure the growth has been here, not because of innovation. We're lacking behind the rest of the world. Lots of words. You can read this, but I won't. How do we fix the problem? The bottlenecks. So, I've never ran an incubator. I have never ran an accelerator, but I have plugged into the back of a lot of them. In fact, in 14 countries. And what we do is we try to support that upper echelon of those that come through innovation programs to make sure they have something that I call survivability. What happens after the program ends? What happens after the demo day, the 3-minute presentation, where the marketing teams from all these VCs are sitting there waiting for lunch? Right? They're going, 10 presentations, 5 minutes, 3 minutes of Q&A. That's 80 minutes I've got to sit here before I can have my free sandwich and a cup of coffee. This is what goes through the mind of the jury members of an innovation day. It's sad. And we're not training our founders to create that impact. So my very first jury was at the Wolf Summit in Warsaw in 2019. 25 presentations. It was soul destroying. And as I left in the break, I was walking out and there was a sign that said Great Britain, and I thought immediately, oh, my people. So I walk over and I met two of the most British guys there. Bartosz Kozinski, Marcin Boran. And I thought, wow, could you get any more English? No. And they asked a very simple question. The simple question was, what did you think? Quite open question. And I thought, well, do I really say what I think, or do I, because they paid for me to be here? So, and you'll learn this. I will tell you exactly what I think. And I said, well, every single presentation had something missing. There was no ask. This afternoon, we're going to see some presentations, right? Guess what I'm looking for? Well, I'll tell you what I'm looking for. It's in the next module, right? And I could almost lay money today and let you know at the end of those, is it 3 minutes we're giving them?
5.
5? That's a long time. That's a long time not to get it right. That's a long time for me to think, come on, the next slide has it, the next slide has it, right? They will not have an ask. If they have an ask, they won't have a value. They won't have considered what's in it for the funder in the audience. We have to teach scale. We have to teach our founders how investors think. We also have to teach them the landscape of capital. They go onto LinkedIn, our founders do. They go down, now they don't. Now they go to ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or Napkin, whatever, this AI system. Top 1,000 investors, they've all invested in deep tech. Okay, ChatGPT, now give me all of the email addresses. Right? HubSpot. 3-minute pitch deck. Claude, how good is my pitch deck? It's really good. It's missing some elements, but it's really good. How do I improve it? Well, perhaps you should ask for this. Well, perhaps it doesn't work. Give me more detail. And you cut, you paste, you cut, you paste, you send it off, 1,000 addresses, and you wait. And you wait, because you send them the bank details, because they're going to invest money now. And you wait, and you wait, and you wait. Dear sir, thank you for submitting your slide deck. It's not in our asset class at the moment. We have a conflicting investment. We are at the end of our funding cycle. But we will keep your details on file and call you back if our circumstances change. This is just like applying for a job. Less than 2% will get a response. Why? Because it wasn't impactful. Why? It didn't have an ask. It didn't say what's in it for the VC. It didn't meet an unmet need, and you didn't enunciate why you're different. These are the fundamental mistakes made by everyone. And why? Because our incubators, perhaps, because I'd like to come and sit through yours, perhaps aren't teaching them the right things at the right time. Also, circumstances change. What was hot yesterday, deep tech, not so hot today. What was last year in May at the Podim conference in Slovenia, I got on stage and said AI was dead. This year they've invited me back. I have no idea why. Right? Because I was Mr. Grinch. And because people have forgotten history. They have forgotten the dot-com crash. Maybe some of them weren't even born yet. Right? But they forgot that back in 1999, 2000, 2001, everybody and their dog said, web, the World Wide Web. Millions went in. If they build it, if I build it, they will come. Field of Dreams, Remember that movie? No? It's because you're all too young. And that doesn't work. Just to put the words blockchain, AI, crypto, non-fungible token, we've forgotten all those words, haven't we? Right? It's buzzwords. And I'm old enough and dumb enough not to be fooled by them. Tell me the problem that you have in the market. I'm going on to the next set of slides now, so I better stop. This is not a criticism of the Enterprise Europe network. This is a global criticism. Like I said, 2005, Y Combinator, funded by Sequoia Capital. 2025, 10,000 of us out there selling business model canvas, lean model canvas, value proposition. I can Google that. On YouTube, I can learn anything I need to learn from an incubator today. Right? So where is our positioning? Incubator, early stage, one size fits all, value proposition, lean model canvas, how to write a cash flow, how to do a pitch. Acceleration, more specific. Could be deep tech, could be med tech, could be construction, environment, impact, slightly more specific. Another program, another 12 weeks, teach you how to write a deck. That's all we've learned. We've improved our PowerPoint skills over 2 lots of 16 weeks. Now we have venture builders. What does that mean? I'm still trying to learn this. All a venture builder does is they go up with their state-funded VC, who's got 15 seconds of experience. They're going to do 10 250,000 rounds. They've got 3 years to do it. Now let's get the deal flow in. We'll go talk to all the incubators. That's a venture builder because they think someone's going to get investment at the other end. I won't mention any names, but there's a couple in Holland, Netherlands. So, deeper dive into the business because you're looking at the investment thesis of the VC. It's quite important if you've got an early stage social impact fund, environment fund, something specific to your deal, partner up with a VC. All a venture builder did at this point was now prepare you for investment for that specific panel or VC. Still doesn't solve the problem. What do the founders need? They need to know how to build an enterprise. Right? Oh, let me go get a bunch of MBA students from the university to come in and teach them. Or I will go get my friends, the accountants, to help them with their finance. Is anybody an accountant? Good. Anybody in the audience an accountant? Close your ears. Because this is my theory. I drive a car. I do not drive a car looking in the rearview mirror. I do not drive my car looking in the 2 wing mirrors. I drive my car looking ahead. What do accountants do? If they were in a car, they'd be driving it backwards. Because they're looking at what you've done over the last 12 months, filing a set of account, managing your taxes. This is an accountant's job. It is not their job to be forward thinking. It's a strategist's job to be forward thinking. We've got to sit there now today and change the way we accelerate and incubate by teaching companies how to grow. That comes from people like me, like you, people that have exited a business, people that have cried when they've had to make a decision on feeding their staff or feeding their family. I would challenge any founder, if they haven't gone through a similar pain like that, whether they're a founder at all. This was one of the headlines. Now, I also worked with universities. So this was my first year at Imperial College's medical school. And I had a job. My job was to work with the MedTech Society to teach entrepreneurship to years 3, 4, and 5 medical students. If you're an academic, I know how to alienate people very quickly. This is why I don't get Christmas cards, especially from academics. Because academics say that they're the smartest people on the planet. There's a huge disparity. I taught a class at Łódź Biomedical University in Poland. And then I spent the following day with about 200 students at undergrad, grad, and PhD level. And I asked them some basic questions about spin-outs and their ideas. They had none. You go talk to the academics. Oh yeah, I'm good. I have done this paper, and I've written this paper. It was funded by the European Union, and I found out that I can't do what I set out to do. Next week, I'm going to write another paper to see if I can do that differently. So what do academics do? They love publishing papers. They find a problem to solve or a research project they want to understand. They write a paper, they get a grant, they publish the paper, that's the end of that job. If you went back to my previous pre-seed, seed, post-seed, if you stopped or paused the business at every one of those stages, the business would end. So you can't tell me that the academics are the smartest guys in the room and they know how to build an enterprise, or the universities are best positioned to manage intellectual property. Most recently, I had two students, one from Algiers, one from Bahrain. They had come through one of my academic workshops. I won't mention their university, otherwise they won't call me back next year. It's very simple. The university wanted 50% of the technology to create a spin-out. And what were they going to do for the spin-out? They were going to register the intellectual property and give them a lab to work in. Perhaps assign a professor to babysit them. The cost of filing intellectual property in the UK is £500. The cost of hiring a lawyer to do it is £7,000 more. It's your choice. £7,500, 50% of the company. Right? Now, in the UK, there are grants for filing IP. And this is why the universities don't necessarily like what I have to say, is because we are hamstringing, putting shackles on the founders before they ever walk off the campus. They've already lost half the equity. There is no real support within academia. I went to Northeastern University. You know what happens there every year? $1 million business planning competition. We're 20,000 students in Boston. Rice University, 10,000 students, just outside of Houston, Texas. Same. MIT, 5 million. University of Texas, 10 million. We do not have the culture of creating innovative commercial spin-outs out of universities. And what I'm challenging us to do here, within the INOVIA network, within the European Enterprise Europe network, is to be able to plug these programs in so the ecosystems get stronger. They collaborate. They work more closely with venture capitalists, work cross-border. I spend all of my time on a plane so I can create cross-border relationships because we're good at certain things. We're not very good at the early stage. We're really good at the scale stage. But if you destroyed the company at the early stage, there's nothing to scale. So that's why I'm here today, is to see what we can do to work collaboratively to commercialize, build enterprise value. These words will come in very handy later on. The reason I'm not reading the slides is because I know you all know how to read. And if you don't know how to read it in English, you can translate it into whatever language you want because we have an AI agent for that. I went to Algeria a few weeks ago and they said, well, could you present in French? I went, nope, I can't even present in English. Then I found a piece of software called Bonds AI, a young Ukrainian developer who lives in Canada. And basically, just like this, it will record what I'm about to say, and it will have me, with my tone of voice, speaking French. So I can't wait to see how that turns out, because I'm learning bits of Polish and Czech, and because Dominic has been my translator. Grants are measured by funding success. They're limited in their scope. Right? End of the grant, end of the program. We've got to get away from that. There has to be equity involved in the innovators and in all the supporters to be able to make them sustainable, right? It does fill a non-dilutive funding gap. It does address that risk at a very early stage. But there's no continuity beyond the grant. And grants change with governments, right? That's the other problem. So health tech might be the flavor of the month for a particular region. And then next year they go to climate tech. So all the grant awards change. The Department for Business and Trade in the United Kingdom do the same thing. One year we're working with local ecosystems and small businesses to create transfer programs. Next year we want big giants to move. So if you're an innovator, an ecosystem underneath, how do you pivot and change? You don't. You create mass confusion. So it's that fragmentation that we've got to stop. The ecosystems have to think more like VCs. In fact, not like VCs, more like private equity. I'll come and talk about that a little bit later. So we have to get involved in all the stages of the companies that come through our systems so we can scale them. We want to be known for scaling companies, not for filling grant schemes, not for walking through a particular program. That gives the ecosystem longevity also. It allows the ecosystem to grow alongside a portfolio of companies. AI. Because I threw a bunch of text into napkin.com and this is what I got. Lack of alignment. So you guys have something quite unique at INOVIA because you're tied in with Wyvernate? No. Innovate. And the Enterprise Europe Network. So I normally don't see this. And this is what really excited me when we had our first phone call, was that you weren't just a incubator in Žilina. You had a whole group that you could rely upon, learn from each other, teach each other, right? Build that ecosystem broader. So you're dealing with that lack of alignment. The grants are short-termism. So you're funded by your government this year to put a program together. What if the money's not there next year? How do you then fund that? Weak discipline. That's the founders. Who's the founder here? One? Just one? You're a founder, too. I know you're a founder. So by awarding grants, guess what we're doing? We're creating a level of expectation that's not perpetual, right? In Wales, it's a good thing this is limited to where it's being broadcast. There's a little country on the side of England. We call it the red-headed stepchild. Welsh founders are so proud of their country that when they start a business, I'm going to go to the Development Bank of Wales, and they're going to fund me. But that's it? You're not writing a business plan? No. Got my idea. I've spun out of Cardiff University or Swansea University. Other universities are also available. And I'm going to go to the Development Bank of Wales and say, here's my plan, give me £250,000. And they have a model that says, as long as we get a minimum of 20% at the early stage, we'll make that happen. They have just destroyed the valuation, right? They've inflated the value at the very outset at £2.5 million, £5 million, when there's no hope of that company ever getting private capital at the same stage. So it's chaos out there, absolute chaos. And our job is to change that chaos. We have to shift to a venture builder model. And it has to be shifted at the incubation stage. It has to be aligned with all of your, why innovate? Innovate. What did you say? Why innovate? Why your why innovate?
Like why innovate? But never mind, we understand you.
Yeah.
Why innovate?
The rest of the network. And this is what we've got to do. Capital integration at the start. Don't rely on the grants. Rely on, what did you say, Kia has a plant around the corner? Yeah? did we not see a Porsche battery place on the way up here?
Yeah.
Go knock on the door. And if you don't know how to knock on the door, give me their address. I'll go knock on the door for you. Companies have something called CSR. Do you know what that is? Corporate social responsibility. They have to feed back. Because when you're listing on international markets, a part of the stakeholders, the shareholders, the pension funds want to know what you're doing for your CSR. And it's not digging a pool in the back garden and putting fish in it. So ask Porsche, battery guys, Kia, the car guys, where are your problem areas? What can we do to help you solve some of your problems? And why don't you give us a couple of euros? Because I know under the European tax legislation, you can write that off. So you're doing something good with the money, you're investing in startups, and you're writing it off. Algeria. I was about to say a little country in North Africa. Did you know Algeria is the largest country by landmass in Africa? And I took the sub-Saharan highway from what looks like Cannes at one end, you know, Mediterranean French buildings. Then you get into Jelina, hills, mountains, greenery. Then you get into desert, right? 40 million people. They found gas about 25 years ago. What they have done to grow their ecosystem, the government has said, if you have a problem in your business and there's a startup there that can solve that problem, you invest in the startup. We will take it off your taxes. In a sense, we have this already in the European Union. We're just not utilizing it. Our Winovate, our Innovias, our Enterprise, Europe Enterprise Network need to push corporates to support the growth, because not only can they provide the funding, they can also provide experience, mentors, business owners, CFOs, not accountants. Embed capital, oh my God, I took all that time, I'm only on the blue. Create structured pipelines, different disciplines for different stages. We have, in our business, we call it Alpha, Beta, Chi, Sigma. Alpha is academia, we're teaching, acceleration programs, outbound teaching, one-to-many, broadcasting. Beta, post-concept pre-revenue. They're ready for funding. Alphas are ready for grants. They're ready for funding, capitalization, unit economic modeling, teaching them how to write a business plan. Chi is clinical, but let's not go there. Then we have Sigma, scale. So it's not about funding today's requirements, it's about where that funding takes you in your growth cycle, in your tactical roadmap, in your enterprise value. So have the stages in there, embed the capital early, then create centralized governance. All of you think the same. Then you've got conformity. You can learn from each of the Winovate centers on what works, what doesn't work. Collaborate, you become your own incubator. You develop your own strategy among your distribution, because all you're doing is empowering your founders to grow faster and learning from each other. Now, this is controversial, but this is what makes the likes of INOVIA sustainable long term. Have an equity creation element in your founders. Because if you've gone out there and talked to Porsche and Kia, or in Italy, they do it really well with the Barilla family, with the Goldinelli Foundation. These are big family offices that support innovation and incubation, right? And what the programs need to have is some incentive, not to pay them more, but to make them more sustainable, to make them less dependent upon grants. I'm running out of time, aren't I?
Okay.
Yeah? What does that mean? That means if you came to me as a startup and you're a beta and you're looking to raise £500,000, not only am I going to put you through a ball-busting stress test, but then I'm going to write your unit economic model. I'm going to write your valuation. I'm going to help you defend it in front of a VC. Because you know what? I might be in the same meeting. We will support you shoulder to shoulder to build your company to the next level and the level after that. For that, I'll want a warrant. A warrant is a fancy name for a letter. And the letter says, if I do all of this stuff, I want some shares in your business. What does that do for INOVIA now? It now has a portfolio of 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 50, 60, 70, 80 that have come through the program. You're now building a venture capital and growth strategy. You're taking it to revenue generation. You're taking it to scale. And you're converting your hard work into a very small amount of shares. But when those shares sell, you're funding the program all over again. This is creating innovation programs in perpetuity. So far, I've not found anyone else that does what we do in the market. And because I don't want to be a one-man band, I want to share this with everybody else. Because if we all innovate the same way, we're going to build a really kick-ass ecosystem. And that ecosystem is not Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland. It's the entire European Union. It's Turkey, it's Ukraine, it's Switzerland, it's the UK. We're a $27 trillion economy with 700 million people. We don't talk to ourselves about that, but guess what Algeria does as a government? We're not going to go to the US anymore because they have an orange Oompa Loompa who lives in a great big White House. Can't tell you where the address is. Can't tell you the name. But this little Oompa Loompa, he's not so little, is managing to disrupt the entire innovation ecosystem all around the planet. Trade is changing. Now, Ursula von der Leyen. In England, we say she's a bit like Marmite. Either you like it or you don't like it. It's a bit like tripe soup that you guys eat over here. I don't like it. Ursula von der Leyen, same. But what she has done is been able to create large-scale trade agreements with other large-scale innovative countries, like India. All the incubators and accelerators in India are all VC-backed. Axelo Ventures spent $250,000 behind a professor who hadn't even set up a company because they liked the idea of testing gut biome through blood rather than feces. That's the level of innovation we need to get to. And by having that equity stake in the ecosystem, you'll be able to do that in a few years' time. Am I at the top of the pyramid? Kind of. We have to replicate and grow. I'll end that one, just because I'm running out of time. This is called the invasive investor methodology. That's me. 18 companies, 13 successes. Outstripping all the investors and the VCs that came alongside me. Because I was an invasive investor. What does that mean? What does the word invasive mean? Oh, he's taking control. No, I'm not taking control. I didn't build the tech. I want to be there, shoulder to shoulder, side by side, building that company underneath. INOVIA needs to be there, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, building the company underneath. Active, not, okay, that's me. Active and not passive. I want to influence the board. I'm a bit of a control freak. But I'm also able to execute because I've been there and done that. And I even have a t-shirt. I'll wear it tonight. So not an investor, not an advisor, but a co-builder of enterprise value businesses. That's what this ecosystem needs to do. What do we get? Higher survival rates, quicker times to market. And what we're also doing is the institutional investors, when they next see an INOVIA managed company, they'll go, you know what? That's been due diligence. That's been built. It's been built well. Let's go there first. So your business plan hits the top of that pile. Because the rest of them has used ChatGPT to carpet bomb a list. Right? Yeah, that's the boring bit at the end. Creation of investable, scalable companies. That's our ultimate goal. It's not to run an innovation program. I am bang on time. In fact, I'm 5 minutes early. Questions, please. Everybody in the audience, you have the app. Click on it, ask a question. Because only the smartest people ask questions. The rest of them are failures. Who's got the thing? Who's got the questions?
Me?
Yes?
May I start?
Absolutely.
You were talking a lot about the founders.
Yes.
And on a daily basis, I really have a meeting with a clinician, with the smarter guys, with the CTOs.
Yep.
They have some solution for the medtech,
Yep.
but they are not the founders. So where to find really founders, as you talk about it, or how to create, or how to grow up the founders, because
Yeah.
it's a really issue to find the people who has a larger overview on the medtech field, for example, and can imagine how to grow up, or how to make a scale up, or how to make a unicorn in the future. So where to find that kind of people, because they are some Tauber,
No, but
or how to grow up the founders.
right. So the first thing you mentioned, that you're there with people, technicians, CTOs, that have found a solution to a problem, right? That's the discussions that you're having today. Empower them to become the founder, right? And they'll say, oh, I'm not a founder. I'm not a business person. I don't even know how to balance my own checkbook. Well, they have AI for that now, right? So as a venture builder, as a innovation ecosystem, you can say to them with your head held high and say, that's a fantastic solution to a problem. In the next module bit, we're going to talk about just that. But you found a solution to a problem that exists, and let us empower you to bring that to market. And as an ecosystem, it's now your pleasure to train that technician to become a founder. As an ecosystem, you take over that interim role of the CEO, the finance guy. You're helping them write the business plan, the unit economic model, but you're also taking equity in it. So you're adopting the role of the founder in a short period of time until the business gets to a certain size where it can afford to bring in its own CEO, its own finance director. And that's exactly how we built MedTech Makers Lab. You know, because we knew that there were problems in healthcare all over the world. We knew there were really smart people that could solve those problems, right? But we didn't want the ideas or the solutions to just go through a 12-week incubation program and just fall out the back door. We've got to empower the people with the ideas to build scalable businesses. And that's the program, right? So don't necessarily look for a founder to step in. Encourage the technologist to step out, stepping out of their comfort zone. But the only way you'll get that done is by telling them that I'll be there with you, right? Great question.
Because you told that they are not so attractive for the investor, because you saw so many pitch decks.
Yep.
And you have 15 seconds to attract to be interested
Yep.
in it or not. So how to encourage, or how to make more effort for the researcher, for the clinicians, for the people from academia branches to be more attractive for the investors, because they really don't have a thinking of the founders, and it's really too hard to prepare a pitch deck that attract in 50 seconds some kind of investor.
I have a whole workshop on that, of how to present to secure funding, right? But the first thing, are you an ecosystem provider?
Yep.
Yep. So it's your job.
Okay.
So your job is to encourage that technologist to get to that investment readiness stage. And again, if you get all of you working together, you might have someone in another INOVIA office that has looked at something similar. And you create a fraternal organization. And I'll tell you where this has worked for me. I took 8 guys, he's one of them, to China. the first time they met was at Terminal 3 Heathrow Airport. 2 from Latvia, you from Slovakia. Who else was there from overseas? That was it.
Portugal.
Who was from Portugal?
Steve.
Steve. South Africa and Portugal. And then a couple from England. So they'd never met. They all had different types and different stages of tech. By the third day, I'd gone to sleep because I love my sleep. But they were up talking to each other, supporting Dominic with his pitch deck in the middle of the night. I did this again in the UK year before last, right? So I had these members of our lab get together, and we went to a dinner. There were 2 founders arguing vocally on the correct method of a third founder's business plan who wasn't even in the room. Right? And this is the culture that we've created. We have something called MedTech Makers Lab. All of our innovators are makers. Then we have master makers, those that have already made businesses. And they all support each other. And I'm the puppet master at the top, the chief troublemaker. Right? Making sure that everyone plays nicely, first of all. And secondly, that they're all there encouraging each other. And that's the community you've got to create. I didn't realize how big INOVIA was until we started looking at the website, until we had the first call. And that comes back to the funnel. Here. Where is it? Centralized governance. Right? So if you have a similar methodology, you can replicate it multiple times. Any questions on our web chat? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Christian, for your time. My name is Juraj. I was thinking, if I should sum it up, your lecture to somebody else. I'm thinking in 2 levels. Like, one thing is that is lack of money, right?
Yep.
Or the structure of it. And then that we have a lot of different, let's say, programs and supporting activities. But I think you mentioned that instead of maybe teaching those founders, we need to be with them in the trenches and help them build the businesses.
Yes.
So if I'm understanding, and now is the question, do I understand it correctly that maybe the model that you are offering or proposing is that you not only somehow bring the money, let's say, at the beginning, together with the customers, like Kia you mentioned, but you also want to be in the trenches with the founders, help them, support them, and be more like active member of the team?
Yep.
Do I get your model correct?
That's absolutely correct. Spot on. Because we have to, as ecosystem developers and ecosystem managers, we also have to pivot. We have to pivot and change to the needs of our founders. 15 years ago, Lean Model Canvas was perfect because it allowed your technician to be able to look at these blocks and say, well, who are my stakeholders? What control factors do I need to do? Right? And all we've done is we've pivoted that to meet today's needs. So, we have to constantly change to the demands of our market, which are our founders. You had a question?
Yeah, I'm a founder in 80 Crystals, but I'm also trying to be an innovation ecosystem builder here in Žilina. And the question that I'm wondering about is, I feel like we, in Europe, we get to a certain stage with every startup, and then when it's really starting to look promising and earn the real money, usually the US invests. I feel it's going to be our journey as well, because we are at that point where we are starting to look, since we're doing products for defense, we are really interesting for the US investors, and they are really pushing on us. It's not like in Europe we have to ask for money and persuade everyone that it makes sense. In the US it's the opposite way around. We are not even ready yet for an investment in the US. We are not mentally prepared to raise money in the US, but the investors are pushing us to that position and they want to invest in our company. So my question, I guess, is how do we keep the value in Europe? How do we invest in Europe into the startups and keep them here as the main base? And how do we protect them from just at the most right stage going to the US and bringing the value there?
There are three elements to that. So we're not the US and the UK, but we're similar, where we have a very mature investment marketplace, but we lack talent, right? Post-World War II, the United Kingdom was, industry central. They were designing, they were manufacturing. Even post-World War I, it was huge innovation, huge manufacturing, huge improvements. And somehow that sort of went away. And where are we now? Financial services, banking, service sector. And we learned during COVID that we carpet bombed all of our farms with solar panels, and you can't eat solar panels, right? And I still don't understand that because we have the least amount of sunshine. Although somebody did explain to me that it's not about sunshine, it's about daylight. You can, so when I first started working in Poland, my very first project was a complete disaster, but that's not the point. The point was that the way the Polish government had structured the grants, that company could not move. It was tied to doing its research where it was. We wanted to take their technology to the UK. And what we did was we created, normally people create subsidiaries. This time we created a strategic topco in order for the capital to be managed, but the innovation to stay exactly where it was. It's about corporate structuring. You can do both. But the other thing also is there are two elements to an investor pushing. By taking the capital today, you might be able to innovate faster. You say you're not ready. Have you ever heard of Richard Branson? Virgin Airways, right? If you ever read his book, he says, say yes now, figure out how you're going to sell it later. Take the money now. Get the investment thesis. Set the deliverables, right? And then grow. Because the risk you have is they'll get bored. They'll go somewhere else. When you say you're not ready, most of the time, capital can solve those problems. Right? It might mean that you have to bring talent into your region rather than take your business out of the region. And today's world, people move. I'm trying to talk my 19-year-old into coming and working in Central Europe, getting her internship here, because this is a faster growing economy than the UK is at the moment. So don't think that because they're a big giant over there that you couldn't find 2 Americans to come to Žilina. You can tell them they have better beer. That'd get me here. So I haven't completely answered your question. So first, understand why they want to push. Look at their underlying portfolio. VCs hedge. So they will have 3 or 4 defense tech investments. Right? It could be that whatever you're building, and we can talk about this offline, has a material impact to what's going on underneath to some of their other companies. So find out why they want you. Look at their portfolio, analyze where they are. It's very important, anytime you do a presentation or a pitch, that you understand who you're presenting to. Look at their needs, right? And then rise to meet their demand. I'll walk you through that later on. Any more questions? Any questions online?
I think that right now we have to
have a break
till 11:15, and after that also question from Slido will be in next block. Okay. So
perfect. We'll pause.
Coffee break till 11:15.
Yeah. What happened to my coffee? Did it hit the tissue? I'll go get one. And I thought, I'm going to get into a crash. So in the end, I just pulled over, turned the temperature down to 18, and spent the rest of the day with my jacket on. I like buttons. I'm analog. Right? I'm a 1960s born child. I like buttons, I like analog, I am pre-internet. I grew up, I had 3 TV channels that were all black and white. And I was happy, because we played outside. You know, we bullied small children. We shot BB guns. You know, today's kid, my son is a techno whiz. He's 16 years old. And I still trade. Even though I left Merrill Lynch a long time ago, I'm still an active trader. So Bloomberg is a trading terminal, and it comes software and hardware. So if you buy the software, it's about £1,400 a month for the trading platform. If you add the hardware, it's £3,500 a month, because it has some kind of dual motherboard, this, that, and the other, all the stuff that goes in it. So my son said, Dad, I can build that for you. I thought, really? And my wife said, let him have a go. So he goes to Amazon, he puts all the parts into a basket, and it comes up to about £4,000, right? And I thought, okay, we're to encourage our children. They're the next generation. And you know what? He built it. He built it 5 years later. It still works. You know, so I thought, okay. So then he put a little Facebook post, his mother did it, that he'll build PCs for people and charge £200. And he will source the parts, build the PC, deliver the PC. And the little bugger's making about £1,000 over the summer breaks, building other people's computers. Now he's got a new racket, ceramic coating on cars. So, and he's very clever. He waited till Easter break. He made me take my car out of storage, park it in the street, and he put Aryan ceramic coating. And he took all day, one panel at a time. He could have been done in a couple of hours, but he wanted the cars to drive by. Right? The material cost about £100. He charges £500 to do an entire car. So he's quite the little entrepreneur.
Okay.
Ready?
Let's continue.
Do we have the questions? Oops.
Okay, we can start with a question from previous blog. Can you mention one of your successfully supported projects in CE and how it worked practically?
Yes. Practically, I can give you a train crash in the CEE. So there was a company in Poland. They manufactured an electric vehicle. You know what? I don't care. It's called Tigo. Right? Tigo were a bunch of Polish engineers that developed a quadricycle. So this is a 4-wheel vehicle, a cabin that was like a motorcycle that was fully enclosed. And the uniqueness of this was the wheels went out at a high speed, came in at a low speed. That was a suite of 17 total patents. It also had autonomous driving. It also had, I can't remember, lots of different features. It was just a state-of-the-art vehicle. And they wanted it to do last-mile delivery and autonomous driving. I wanted to take the business plan into a different direction. Because what we didn't see, and this next session is all about demand-based business modeling, I didn't see a need for last-mile delivery when we had lots of electric bicycles coming into the market. I also didn't see a need for autonomous driving at this stage within the European Union. What I did see was a need for this device or business in healthcare. So we completely pivoted the model. And we were just talking on the break about the IP. The company, because it was grant funded, we couldn't move it because the market for this vehicle in health tech was in the UK. We wanted to change the application to use it as a stroke response vehicle because in London, an ambulance cannot get through traffic. A motorcycle ambulance cannot have 2 passengers for health and safety. What the Trigo did was allow 2 paramedics to cut through traffic in a singular vehicle for a stroke patient because they needed to administer a clot buster or something else. There are two methods of a stroke. And we went through all the process. We got the National Ambulance Service involved. We got the British Stroke Association involved. And it was ready to go for a trial. It was homologated in the UK. It was manufactured in Poland. We ran first into a problem of the IP moving. Secondly, we had a problem with the investors wanting the companies to be in the UK. So we restructured the whole business. We talked about this earlier. We put the top co, kept all the production in Poland. And this is where, and I use this term a lot, the founders started to buy their own press. What that means is there were lots of articles about the company, lots of publications written about them. They were invited to Vegas. They were invited around the world to showcase their technology. And the founders wanted to put the company on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. This is the biggest mistake they could have ever done. You never put a pre-revenue company on a financial exchange. Because financial exchanges like revenue, they like reporting, they like progress. And the value was so overinflated that the company fell short of meeting the demand for growth, and the company ultimately failed. Second one, not in the CEE, but in Greece. We have an immunology doctor who came to us 5 years ago with patents on a biomarker that stops a woman from miscarrying a baby. Every woman has an inbuilt natural killer cell, the NK biomarker. And what we don't know is most women will lose a pregnancy within a normal 28-day cycle. So she had created the biomarker, she had created a fatty chain amino acid, she had patented it in 36 countries. Then she came to us and said she was looking for investment for a clinical trial. This could have taken the business 10 years. What we did was we investigated what was contained in the supplement, in the amino acid, and realized that it was all natural. So we could pivot it to become a food supplement. 5 years on, that company now, at the last value, was sitting at 38 million. She's 3 million of earnings a year, and we're 5 years in. If we'd have taken the first track, we'd still be in the middle of phase 2 clinical trials. So often the value that we add is pivoting a business model to suit, one, the needs of the market, but two, also the needs of the company. That was 2 examples, one that wasn't so good and one that was so good. There is another one, again, Central Europe, Poznan. I didn't make the investment. The technology was fantastic. It was a handheld, AI-driven stethoscope. Stethome was the company. Again, you have to look at the founder, and we talked about this on the break, is what do we do? Well, our job as an ecosystem is to guide. Is to guide and help the companies execute. And sometimes you have to tell the companies things they don't want to hear. And if they don't listen at that point, unfortunately, that becomes the conclusion of that particular engagement. So we've had some successes. As the organization we are today, we're only 3 years old. But there are 11 companies in our portfolio at the moment. There's about 9 that will onboard this year. So this whole idea of co-developing enterprises is still relatively new. But ask me next year, and I'll give you some better data.
We can continue.
Yep, great. So I'm very disappointed with all of you out there on the World Wide Web listening in, because I would have expected a lot more questions. On the next break, I'll be expecting more questions. Also, if there are not more questions, we will ask you guys kindly to come to Jelena next time. Back to basics. We talk about innovation, we talk about the changes in ecosystem, we talk about changes in venture capital, we talk about shoulder-to-shoulder development. We've got to go back to 1883. Okay, the author was born in 1883. I think there is so much technology in the world today, there is so much noise that we've forgotten what innovation is, right? And in the early 1900s, innovation was simply carrying out a new combination. You didn't have to cure cancer to become an innovative company. You don't have to do something so novel that nobody's ever heard of it. Essentially, you have to make an improvement. Disrupt the status quo. If somebody can change something by 25% under the European patent rules, you can refile a patent improvement. I didn't know that until a couple of years ago. So I think founders put too much pressure on themselves to be so exclusive, to be one of one, when it's not necessary. In fact, competition is quite important. In a few slides, I'm going to say the CEO of Coca-Cola doesn't have restless nights worrying how many bottles of Pepsi sell. And what that means is you grow as an ecosystem. You grow as a movement. So that's the first thing. We need to get back to the basics of innovation. And the basics of innovation start with solving a problem, right? Why does innovation matter? That slide is in the wrong place because I was fiddling with them earlier this morning. We'll come back to it. This is a horrible statistic. 1% of 200 startups scale beyond prototype, right? That's actually 1 in 200. That percentage mark shouldn't be there, right? Academics, institutions hold IP for asset protection. You've heard the rumors how there's already a cure for cancer, and yet some big molecule holder like Biogen or Pfizer are not allowing that technology to go to market because it doesn't make commercial sense. The same way, a lot of intellectual property is held in family portfolios not to be developed. And we've got to change that. We've got to change that mindset. We spend a lot of time on research in Europe and in the UK. But it's your question earlier. I know a technologist that does this, but I can't get him to become a founder. And that's where that less than 27% sits. Is great ideas, identifying problems, but not having the confidence to turn it into a business. The same thing with why do European companies don't scale? How much of that is a lack of confidence over the substantiating of the technology? Are we afraid to step out of our borders? We used to have a joke about Wales, that they were great where they were in their 3 million people, but they wouldn't take the Severn Bridge, which is now called the Prince of Wales Bridge, to come into England and play, right? So are you comfortable in your 5 million populated Slovakian comfort zone? Most of you will say no. So then why aren't you doing it? Things to think about whilst you're sitting on the toilet. Innovation management structures creativity into value, right? So if 1 to 5% of spin-outs scale, how much of that is due to a lack of funding and how much of that is due to a lack of ambition? I think a lot of it is due to a lack of ambition. Tenured professors like doing what they do, writing papers, teaching classes, going to conferences, having coffee breath, right? And the other thing is they're scared of the valley of death. Everyone fears failure. Guess what the Americans don't fear? They don't fear failure, right? Let me tell you a little bit about Trevor in the pub in England and Travis in the pub in Texas. Travis says to his friends, I'm starting a business at the pub on Friday. Over the weekend, his friends will call him and say, hey, what can I do to help? Well, I need a customer. Do you know anybody that does this? Yeah, I know a friend that does that. By Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, his friends have helped him get one step further. Trevor in the pub in England, I'm starting a business. Ooh, are you sure about that? You want to leave your job at Skoda to start a business? Ooh, I'm not sure about that. 2 weeks later, back in the pub. Are you a millionaire yet? Was it the right decision? 2 years later, Travis is now at Series A. Can I have a job? Right? Everybody wants a part of the success, but nobody wants the pain of the journey. Everybody wants to eat the food, nobody wants to go out and hunt. This is the problem. Americans don't fear failure because you know what? They get back up, brush off their suits, go back to work. They start all over again because they have learnt what they did wrong the first time. Coming back to fears of failure, valley of death, right? Where research fails to become revenue is just that. We talked about it earlier. I've got great technologists, I don't know how to turn them into a founder. They worry about a lack of expertise. They worry about evolving regulations. They think about all the problems rather than saying, I'm going to get to the end, I'll find someone to help me solve that problem, I'll find somebody else to help me solve this problem. As an ecosystem, your job is to help solve those problems to avoid the valley of death. Right? That's what we do. Within our Alpha, Beta, Chi, Sigma programs, we eliminate the risk of the major jumps in the growth cycle of a business. Underpinning all of that is money. And there's a whole lecture series on venture capital. So our job is to bridge that gap. And you'll see this slide being repeated in a little while because I forgot to take it out. But I'll just reinforce it. Our job is to support what our founders don't know. If we don't have it in INOVIA or in your local ecosystem, find it in your community. What did I say about Kia, Porsche, Barilla, Golinelli Foundation? Right? The biggest CVC, corporate venture capitalist in the UK, Johnson & Johnson. They have a massive innovation campus in Reading. And anyone can go there. Loughborough University, in the middle of England, a tiny university, has LU Inc., Loughborough University Incorporated. Not only do they support the students and the academics, but also businesses in the local area can use this innovation space. And we've got to do things that are similar. So where does innovation start? Right? Coming back to those that have ideas and not sure how to progress those ideas is look at, does somebody need what I've got? Right? Often, there are plenty of ideas, nobody needs them. And I'll give you a prime example. At Warwick University, we had this guy, a colostomy bag is something that I wouldn't wish upon anyone. It's a device that's attached to the bowel, for people with a certain illness. So this guy has invented a way to isolate the bag so he can take a shower. Because he's 6'4". I don't know what that is in meters, but 2+. Tall guy. So normally somebody with a colostomy bag can only take a bath. So they can keep the bag out. Great idea. He designed it. He got a patent on it. But there was no market for the product. There's not enough users to create a viable business. If there's not enough users to create a viable business, it is not something that can be invested in. That's not a fault of the ecosystem. That's not a fault of the investor. That's generally a fault of not understanding the user desirability, the market, how big it is, how do you get to it. What's it called? Tam Sam Som? That is the laziest way of valuing a business. If I see that on a pitch deck, oh my gosh, where are the guys from this afternoon? If I see that on a deck, I will lose my shit. Sorry. £10 billion market, I'm going to get 1% in 3 years. I'm a unicorn. I'm a unicorn. First of all, unicorns are a mythical character. They only exist in Care Bear movies. They are not real. To have a valuation of $1 billion at seed stage is the definition of a unicorn. Don't be a unicorn, be a chubby rhino. Unicorns don't exist, 28,000 chubby rhinos in the wild. In fact, that's going to be the name of our new hedge fund. We'll call it Chubby Rhino Investments, picking the top 28,000. Then, is it viable as a business? Your crystals, for example, when you produce them, don't answer the question because it's been recorded, but you have to look at the cost of delivery and the economic impact of what you're delivering into the market. I think I said it earlier, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Meaning that if it's too expensive to deliver and the product, the predecessor, does its job, you will find it hard to compete. So business model viability is something you've got to consider when developing a technology. Finally, technical feasibility. Can it be built? 2024, the European Union said to automakers, we have to reduce our dependency on rare earth materials. This is at a time where batteries are being made. What do batteries need? Magnets. What do magnets come from? Rare earth materials. Where do they come from? China. I'm just assuming this is north for now. China. Taking up that challenge was a little company in Greece. And I know this because I'm a part of it. A little company in Greece who were recycling catalytic converters using a chemical reaction model. So they were extracting the platinum, the silver, the gold, the carbon out of a catalytic converter. And their chemical engineers started to think, could we do it this way versus the government of France spending 300 million on a pyrolysis plant with the government of Japan in the countryside of France, which still hasn't launched 8 years in. So they tried it, and it worked. Then there was a grant from the European Innovation Council and a partnership with Stellantis. Now, this company can recycle 95% efficacy in magnets back to reionized magnet dust to make more batteries. That's innovation. The pyrolysis didn't work because its cost of recycling was so high that it was still cheaper to buy them in with all the tariffs coming out of China. So you have to look at the technical feasibility of putting carbon into the air, the cost of importing, taxation, shipping, carbon footprint. Because the whole reason we went to electric cars was to reduce carbon footprint. And if we're going to ship them in from China, where are we? So in medtech, in molecule development, in life sciences, the technical feasibility is that of clinical trials. The time it takes, the cost that it takes. So you have to look at your roadmap of developing the tech to a commercial grade of generating revenue. And finally, which in a minute I'm about to reverse all this, is there an unmet need? Right? Now, 4 steps. Do you need a business model canvas now? No, you don't. Because when these guys are presenting this afternoon, there's only 4 things I want to know. Right here. When you're onboarding people into your ecosystems, start thinking like this. There's another way. Need, approach, benefit, competition. I would love to say that I invented this, because all of my workshops are based on demand-based business modeling, which is a derivative of this. I do a little thing called delivering the perfect pitch, and it evolves this. Need, first thing, is there a problem that you solve, and do you understand the problem? That's what I want to know from the founder. Do they understand the problem, or do they understand the technology? These are 2 very different things, right? Then approach. Now tell me about this technology. The first thing, you're telling a story. Tell me the problem that you're solving, then tell me about the technology. Because if you bore me with the technology, I'll have gone to sleep. And I can go to sleep standing up, looking at you square in the eyes, not paying attention. Dominic knows this. Then who does it benefit? Where's the value? Right? And finally, competition. Competition isn't somebody else that does exactly what you do. Competition isn't necessarily making an improvement on the tech before. Do you know what competition is? Apathy. I don't know whether you have it in the shopping malls in Slovakia, but if you go to a shopping mall in England, these guys will run up with your leaflet. Do you want to change your mobile phone plan? Can I change your windows at your house? Right? Do you need a new electric system at home? Selling you stuff. And you say no by default. Right? Even though your mobile phone provider might be too expensive. You just say no. We are ingrained to say no. You go into a shop, ma'am, can I help you? No, I'm just looking. And you know you're in there to buy a dress. You know you need help because they can't find the size on the rack. It happens to me a lot. So competition is apathy. I don't want to change. I'm happy with where I am, especially if you're selling into the military, into healthcare, into education, into government. They don't want to change because the pain of changing is far greater than the benefit. So if you go back to the NABC, understand those 4 elements before you go to a VC, before you come and talk to me about funding. Sneak on the next slide. Yep. Right. So when you're looking at creating a piece of research, looking at investigating, first, define the problem. So if you have an idea, go to the problem first. Remember your technology founders in the medtech world, right? Before they get into the science of it, find out what problem they're solving. Often, an existing piece of technology can solve an alternate problem, catalytic converters to magnets. 2 completely different technologies, combustible engine, electric engine, or electric motor. Solution and IP. Does the solution work? Where have they tested it? Is it protected? Is there a moat? Right? How do you defend the tech? Don't think that a moat always requires a patent, a trademark, or a copyright. A moat can also be a strategic relationship. That if you're working with a major player and you're a key supplier, you have a moat. Because for somebody else to disrupt that relationship will take forever. And then the value to the user, the ecosystem, the planet, for those that actually worry about it. And why are you better than the existing solution? Right? And that's only the start of building your pitch. Only the start. So we've got to go back and look at the way we develop technology in order to build ecosystems that are better. To make a better, more fundable business, you've got to go back and look at the need, the problems they solve. So many companies come through these huge incubation programs and they're all doing the same thing. Nothing's changing. We've got to be more disruptive. To create long-term sustainability, most ecosystems fail when the money runs out. That doesn't fail the ecosystem. That fails a nation or a region because you're no longer there. To make you more sustainable, you've got to rely less on public funding. And the other thing is create continuity. Because what happens after the 12-week program or the 6-month program or the 1-year program? Where do they graduate to? Now, in the short term, we filled that gap. Because we'll say, we'll come and have a look at all of your medtech companies. We'll onboard them in the lab and we'll continue them on. But the market is so big that we want to teach you how we do it so that we can innovate as a region. And my region is the 700 million people that touch the European Union. So we can play on a competitive planet. Why? Because there's no incentive for you to continue. Funding's run out, services run out. My team have to go find another job, right? There's no recurring revenue. Some of you have asked me about the warrants and the warrants that we take. That keeps our ecosystem running. And there's no capital strategy. We're not building any value in the business itself. The ecosystem is a transactional revenue model. And that's what makes the ecosystems vulnerable. To make them sustainable, we have to start capital stacking, taking warrants, taking fees, building ventures. That brings a corporate finance element to the ecosystem itself. Now, you'll say, well, we don't have anyone to do that. Bring it in. Hire it in. Partner it in. Right? To get it started. Then build your own. Equity retention. Grow with the asset. So we have warrants in a number of companies. We are incentivized by growing them, because the value of our warrant grows with the value of that company. When that company capitalizes, we get money. When the company grows, floats, we get money. When we raise them capital, we get money. What else? We also charge them for time. Because we've raised them capital, we're going to charge them for mentoring. So we have fees for raising capital, we have fees for managing innovation, and we have fees on exit. That creates a sustainable stack. Finally, platform thinking. You've got to look at a wider ecosystem, get everybody thinking the same. We have built our own platform that we now give to other ecosystems, so we run across the same tactical roadmap. It processes deals faster. So these are some of the solutions on how to keep ecosystems sustainable. Capital stacking in practice. What does it mean? Early stage, it's grants, de-risking innovation. Mid and growth stage, it's structured finance. Right? So I've heard this a lot. Well, I'm looking for £1 million, but I'm going to take 150 right now. Well, when you spend the 150,000, what will have changed in your enterprise value if you needed $1 million? So you're saying that if I give you 150,000 today and you spent it, there's no material change in the enterprise value. So why would I make the investment? Underfunding is the destroyer of startup companies. They don't have enough to get to the next level. And the next level is not the next round, it's not the first product sale, it's increasing the enterprise value. And this is the application of VC thinking into early stage companies, private equity thinking into early stage companies, right? Then the outcome of all of this is the founder is diluted less, the warrants have more value, and we've built a scalable enterprise, right? So if your ecosystem doesn't know this, I will come and teach it to you. People will say, why do I do this? Why do I travel around the world giving away all my IP? Because the pie is bigger than I can eat on my own. And I can eat a lot. Except last night I was beaten by the Slovak down here. There's the opportunity, right? You are an ecosystem that is in various geographies. You can create regulatory arbitrage. You can grow together, creating single frameworks, a work in progress. You've got better access to markets because you're in multiple countries. But you've got to think together. Build interconnected pipelines. Remember what we said earlier? We said, well, you might not have the skill sets in your team, but the team in Ostrava might. Right? So understand who you're working with. Look at their backgrounds. And then handpick the delivery team, even if they're in a Winovate office in a different area. Yep. I don't know what that means at the bottom. Anybody got any idea? Example model? No clue. I don't know why I wrote that. It must have been important at the time.
Isn't it easier or more accessible to do some validation in UK, for example?
Perhaps. You know what? Thank you very much. That's exactly where I was going. Were you there when I developed the slides? So,
With my mind, I guess.
yeah. So so this going back to medtech, we are very good at clinical validation. The Midlands.
In EU, we usually have some issues with
Yeah.
all the regulatory stuff.
We do. And it's not just that. Where I was going with this was clinical validation. So we have a project in Latvia, and they did a 9-patient clinical trial on 9 Latvian men who are all the same. In the Midlands, we have 11 million people, 234 diverse ethnicities. Right? So you want to do a cross-section clinical trial, you can do it all in one area. So learning to validate in the UK is fine, but we don't have the scale of the EU. Right? Then you go into emerging markets like Algeria, India, where you can do clinical trials for 10% of the cost, right? And 10 times faster. So we've got to think globally. And this is why connecting ecosystems is so important. Thank you very much. The role, your role. Start becoming an asset owner. Start looking at your companies as a portfolio, just like a private equity firm, right? Don't let it be a transactional advisory piece that is paid for by a government. You know, be an asset owner. Also be a capital allocator. Find the resources it takes to build the underlying enterprise. Take on a duty of care to each of those founders. You can have these as well.
Yeah, I just want to take a photo with you.
Ah, got it. Now this is my thin side. So when you're posting on Instagram, take it vertical, take it from this side. If you put it on LinkedIn, do it this way because it's a square image. And then the greatest advantage INOVIA have and why Innovate is your cross-border relationships. Right? Remember the very, very first slide we said Prague and Czech Republic had huge incubators, innovation space. Leverage it. Right? This section is shorter because I have another break that we might not need. Any questions coming on Slido? I'm very disappointed in all you guys looking online. We spent hundreds of euros getting the kit in here.
There is a question.
Are there any hubs in Europe that have achieved financial sustainability independently of government or EU public funding? If yes, do you know how?
Us.
So you are the unicorn.
We're not a unicorn. Remember, we're a chubby rhino.
hard to find one. That's
So far, no. There are a new breed of venture builders that are funded by VCs. And all the VC essentially is doing is using the ecosystem to do the due diligence for them. The one in Netherlands, who just raised 20 million, right? Which will go into companies. But not just because you join their accelerator doesn't mean you're going to get their funding. Whereas you join our program, we're responsible for raising your capital. It's not, so far, Plug and Play, who are international, have succeeded in making investments directly into their ecosystems. But all of their satellite programs are funded by the local governments. So really, are they doing what we're doing? Similar, but not the same. Yes?
I heard about some similar programs, I think in UK or London, like Founders Factory. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of Founders Factory. In fact, I've delivered some of their workshops. So again,
so what is their model?
Their model is not dissimilar to the one in the Netherlands, where they have a group of VCs that support the delivery of programs. But they're still disparate. Now, the one that comes the closest, and also one of my favorites, is in Estonia. So you have health founders, or health founders, and you have Verge. Verge is a VC. Verge delivers health founders across the world. In fact, one of our delegate companies in our platform has come from health founders. So they are more integrated, the VC and the acceleration program, but still technically different. And so we are also technically different. You know, our VCs and investors aren't attached to us, but we have a different duty of care. Even health founders still have a program that concludes either with or without investment, whereas we're continuing to build those companies. So if anybody finds somebody that does what we do, I would love to know, because I'm sure we could share knowledge. And I'll tell you where there's going to be one. Where's your building? Over here. Yeah, just around the corner. They don't know this yet, but there's going to be one in Jelena. Any more questions? Oh, you're good.
Yeah, I got one. In the previous part, you mentioned that we as startup guys need to be shoulder to shoulder with the startups.
With the founder, yeah.
Yeah, with the founder, helping them grow and so on. From my level of experience, many of us are not people who would have startups previously. So we are always dealing with the fact that we don't have that level of knowledge of a startup founder. We don't know what they can expect or in which detail, and how we can bridge that gap. Because now you mentioned something coming like, or treating the organization like a startup itself.
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, you're going to build a new program with these three elements added to what you already do. And look, every startup doesn't have skills. Every startup needs to develop skills. We have advisory boards. We have advisory panels. So I have a 9-member advisory panel from how many countries, Dominic? 3? Poland, Slovakia. Magda's also Poland. So I went out and handpicked gaps in my knowledge base and created an advisory panel and incentivized them to join. So in my lab, if you became an advisor, you joined the senior advisory team, and I'm giving you equity in the lab with no cost. But I need your brain because it's a gap that I have in my delivery. So having a CRO was very important to me, so I brought a CRO in.
How do you know you have the gap if you don't have the...
Well, as an ecosystem, so as a medtech program, there are certain stages. So there's clinical, regulatory, then business and whatnot. And I knew where my gaps were. I knew how to write a unit economic model. I knew how to do market research. What I didn't know how to do was clinical validation. So when I went to a consultant for clinical validation, and consultants are the worst bumflies on the planet, because they will have meetings to see how many invoices they can send you on an hourly basis. I'm not a big fan of consultants. But knowing that I had that, and when I referred my project to an outsider, what I lost was control. So I brought the advisory team in to say, hey, listen, if you're doing a clinical trial for that particular product, it's going to take this long and it might cost this much. So bring the skills in that you don't have. Bring in founders. You will find that most founders that have done reasonably well love to help others because they know the pain of your founders. There's that emotional connection. This is why VCs aren't always your best friend. Family offices are better because there's a matriarch or a patriarch that started that family years ago who were also a founder, right? So I encourage you, if you have gaps and you don't know, bring it in. I'll come help for a little while. You have to bring those cookies.
Happy to do that.
Yeah, I like my coffee black.
Which ones of those?
This one here.
Oh,
The one that looks like a tooth.
That's fine. Yeah.
As his doctor, I would advise.
Should we make a homemade some kind of a refinement?
No, check.
Sugar-free.
You guys have Christmas cookies. That big box, 2 kilos, that's enough. I'm just going to go right in. This is our job. so you don't have to do the Heimlich maneuver. We have to get it out. It says bench to boardroom because that was the title you guys chose. We have to get it out from the grey matter that sits in the brains of these amazing scientists that we have. And we have to put all the different things into a Venn diagram. So the tech sits with the founder. The process sits with us as an ecosystem. And that creates a sustainable entrepreneurship program, right? You're from Jelena. You have a great idea. You've already supported one business. Now you go to do more. You want to add back in. All of these things are important, right? Because if we can't get it out of the grey matter of the brains, and if we can't isolate what the problem is it fear? Is it capital? Because I'll tell you now, as I told you on the break, if you have a great novel idea, the money will find you. It won't care where you are. So it's not money. I think it's fear. I think it's that we're very good at swimming in our small ponds and we don't want to cross the ocean. I crossed the ocean and came back. Right? Poles do that really well. That's why they're $1 trillion economy. We have to bridge the gap. What I'm going to do now is there's some case studies, right? Which I'm going to go through and you guys can ask questions about it. I think we're actually good on time, which is very rare for me. Our job is to be the bit in the middle, right? Everybody's great at research. It's this part, the market demand, the priorities. You know, moving stalled innovation is what's critically important. Because they will come in, they will go through a 12-week, 16-week program, then they will leave and they'll go back to their academic jobs. They'll go back to their whatever they were doing before. And in that demo day, you might have seen a great piece of tech that then is still there going to another accelerator somewhere else. At Podim last year, I asked the question, how many of you have been to an acceleration program? Almost everyone raised their hands. Then I said, how many of you done 3 or more? I was expecting about 20% to raise their hands. Half of them did. Now, I don't know how big Slovenia is, but this was not just Slovenia, but it was all those old former Yugoslavian states. So their market reach for the Podium conference is quite big, but full of small countries. Over half had been to 3 different acceleration programs. The next question was, what did you not learn in the first one that you learned in the second? Here's the sad part. They thought they were going to get more money. But they pitched the same deck. Same business model canvas, same value proposition. Same deck, same missing questions. So what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing every day and expecting a different result. Going to one acceleration program to another doesn't solve the problem. This is why Innovate, INOVIA have to be different. Once they leave this program, they have learned something. You have failed them, meaning go off and start something else, or you're building them. That's the 2 outcomes. There shouldn't be a grey area that forces them to go to startup boot camp in the Netherlands, or go to an acceleration program in Prague because they think, oh, it's bigger there. The quality, we have to speak from quality, right? Even though on the email it said UCL, it's actually Imperial College. So equally as good. But it doesn't say UCL on my t-shirt, it says Imperial, so I have to wear that one. This is not just Imperial College, this is all universities all across Europe. We lead in research and innovation. We lead in idea forming. We lead in science, but there's no commercial success. The key barriers are there's a lack of translation. That's our job, is to translate, be a translative organization that advises technology to commercialize. Misaligned incentives. Well, I'm not sure about joining the university, I might lose half my company. Well, guess what? At least you'll have half. I don't want to talk to a VC because they take too much. Well, you'll have a smaller piece, but of a much bigger pie. I have these challenges all the time of, well, if I go to a VC, they're going to take too much, I'm going to stay with a grant. Well, you can stay with a grant for 2 more years and get another grant for another year. By that time, I will have found something else to go all the way around you, funded by capital, and that's now 5 times the size. The required mindset shift was, one, the researchers say, is the technology working? Is my research positive or negative? Get away from that mindset. 2, does this solve a scalable market problem? This is what we should be challenging the University of Žilina with. We should be saying in all your research programs, across all of your faculties, do research that solves a scalable problem. Have I bored you? Okay, just checking. If your wife is calling, certainly break a presentation. If my wife calls, just check. No, she knows better. So this is the mindset shift that we have to have in our universities. So wherever your universities are, talk to the Technology Transfer Office and say, look, we'd like to come in and talk to some of your academic researchers and present this, present NABC, present demand-based business modeling. Say, hey, listen, what can we do to help you solve a problem? Or do a spin in. Find a commercial problem that exists in the marketplace, go to a university and say, can you help me solve this problem? Right? So again, let's be disruptive in the way we innovate. This is a repetitive slide. It just says the same thing in a different way. Right? What is the application of technology? My tech does this. Great. Who does it work for? The conversation ends. Right? We've got to get our scientists thinking about commercial outcomes. This is very important. Value inflection. Right? So earlier on, I said we need to get away from the narrative of pre-seed, seed, post-seed, pre-AA. We have to go with, if I had £1 million, I'm going to take my idea today to market ready. At market ready, Christian says, by using waterfall or discounted cash flow method, understanding the unit economics, that if I deliver that business plan over 3 years, the value of my business goes from €1 million to €5 million. That is called the valuation inflection point. Instead of raising rounds to meet needs, raise rounds to increase enterprise value. That is a very American VC methodology. This is a family office pension fund methodology. It's how do I grow the enterprise value? Turn complex situations into clarity. So develop tech knowing where you're going, rather than just getting money in and building air balloons with little cameras, checking meteor something. Look from an investor lens, right? What do I look for? Market size. It's not about the market size. It's about, do you know where the market is? Can you access it? Sitting in Žilina, North Slovakia, if your market sits in China, how are you going to get to it? I'm not telling you not to go for it. I'm going to ask you to put a plan together on how do you access it. Most people that will have a global technology say, I'm going to get a distributor here, 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 and here. And I'm going to sell locally in Slovakia. Great. You're selling in a £100 billion market, and you're distributing in a $27 trillion market, which is the US. Why would you do that? And they don't have an answer. Why give up half of the revenue with a distributor when you can raise capital to build your own team to keep more of the margin? Increase your enterprise value. right? Distribution is not the right methodology for an early stage company. What is the adoption pathway and the regulatory route? Because that causes delays in sales. Do you remember I spoke about Rhody Fertility? She's working through distributors. But her problem is that every new country she signs up a distributor with, she's facing a, is there a dot? No. I forget it. Doesn't matter. She faces a 1-year regulatory hurdle. That's a delay in cash flow. So again, Investor Lens says, I'm glad that's a food supplement because it's 12 months. If it was a clinical trial, it'd be 5 years. So every scientist, every technology, every founder needs to have a commercial lens in their glasses. This is repeating the same thing. We have to transform the way we speak. We have to create a roadmap. We have to make it easy. We have to understand what small successes are in order for a company to succeed. And the only way you do that is to put a bunch of founders together and get them talking about their individual routes to market. Because as an ecosystem provider, you mentioned that you don't have the skill sets to do that. But if you are observing a panel discussion amongst 4 founders from 4 different sectors in 4 different market accesses, guess what you're going to learn? A lot. Yeah? We are now executionists. Our job is to execute, right? Commercial leads early, regulatory strategy from inception, clinical validation pathways. Build multidisciplinary teams. Within your own incubators and accelerators, build multidisciplinary teams. Fill the gaps. Yep. And then have that clear governance structure. I only have one more slide. How are we doing for time?
Well, maybe questions. I can. Okay.
So my final slide is my final takeaway.
Okay.
So let's start with, no, sorry, there is a bit more. Do you want to learn about the funding landscape? Are we sure? Yep. Since you guys don't ask questions, you don't get to make a decision. Okay, we're going to talk about the funding landscape. Right. Bad news, VC deal flow is down. Is that really bad? No. We have more capital in the market today than we've ever had in history. The capital has shifted. Do you know how a VC works? Any clue, anyone? Yeah? Oh, well, I'll give you my version of it then. So a VC works on a Victorian partnership basis. General partner, limited partner. Remember earlier I said I was an LP in a VC? I'm a limited partner. Make no decisions. Who has the risk in a VC? GP or LP? LP. Yeah. So the VC puts a bunch of clever people together. They go to the market and say, we're really smart. You give us your money. We're going to charge you around 2% for the privilege of putting it in our bank account and investing it. And then we're going to invest it into companies. We're going to make those decisions. And when the reward comes back, we might give you 70% of it. And we'll keep the rest. Now, in the old days of venture capital, and I've got an entire 45-minute lecture on this, the history of venture capital, it worked. Venture capital's only been around since the 1960s, right? It started in Silicon Valley. It was successful because a group of people got together, backed Digital Equipment Corporation, which was then listed on the stock exchange. 100x return was given to the investors. So they took their return, they pulled it together, created an organization. Boston said, we're pretty good at this. Let's create an ecosystem of all the family offices in our area. And this is how regionalized VCs happened in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. By the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, The investors in the VCs started to learn how the VCs worked and started syndicating. These are the family offices, and this is what's happening now. So whilst the VCs are 25% down, family offices are making more investments than they ever have by syndicating. So I give a lecture at the Gateway to Enterprise. I go twice a year, I give a workshop to family offices on how to spot trends. So it's not that venture capital is down or capital is down, it's that VCs are down. Because the private wealth and family offices are increasing their presence, because they're learning how to syndicate. And what's filling the gap now are larger seed investors. In England, we have something called crowdfunding. Little platforms. You put your stuff up there, investors put their money up there, you transact, right? £1 billion a year. Not only that, we have these tax incentives, so the investor gets 50% off their taxes. So now they've made a transaction at a discount of 50%. And there's no capital gains tax. And if the company after 3 years loses the rest of it, you write the rest of it off. Not bad. Spain have launched something similar, Italy's launched something similar. We should push our government here to do something similar. It keeps the capital in-house. So where you go for money. So the difference between an angel investor, a venture capital, a family office, a private equity, and a pension fund. I'll just give you a very quick rundown. Seed investors, big risk, very early stage, alongside grants. Once you've validated the risk and got to revenue, you go into the venture capital world. The word venture capitalists don't venture anymore. They don't V in the venture capital because they are now acting like PE houses looking for longer term sustainable scale. PE houses buy companies and grow them. Grow them to a certain scale, they either IPO them or they give them to pension funds to grow even longer. So that's how the company starts at the foundation stage, exits out. And what's happened is we've crushed the way all of that funding works. So the VCs are acting more like pension funds, the pension funds are acting more like, the VCs are acting more like PE, the PE is acting more like pension funds. And there's a huge gap called the funding gap, which is where all of our founders are sitting. Crazy. Now, we've had all the bad news. Let's end on a positive note. When COVID happened, there was a lot of investment in medtech, life sciences. Medtech and life sciences now have outgrown fintech as an asset class because we can only do so much with a checkbook. AI is still dead. Right? And here's my challenge and why. Because unless you have an unmet need that you're satisfying with an agentic AI system, you're not building anything commercial. If you're just building large language models, that's not enough. Because now try catching up with Sam, whatever his name is, at ChatGPT and Claude and Anthropic and all of the others. Right? Large language models exist. It's now defining them for your particular need. We've actually built our own to do medical research. And it was so smart that it told us, yes, we've looked at the IP. Whilst it's been filed, it's not defendable. An agentic AI investigation told me this. It also spotted that a piece of the revenue of a particular business was going to Iran. And it also picked out that one of the directors of a company was investigated for fraud in a charity she was involved in. You can almost have too much information. Because I could have dismissed that lady, because she has a great tech, based on AI's feedback, and missed out on a great opportunity. So we have to be very mindful. What AI does not provide us is emotional quotient. Because there's a reason she did what she did. Right? The money going to the Iranian holding company, he's Iranian. So There's a reallocation. Sorry, that was a very long way of answering a very small question. We had contraction. Contraction means that it wasn't capital that went missing, it was capital that was put in a sidecar, like on a motorcycle, held for their companies because inflation was going up. So if I'd invested 10 million in your company, all of a sudden we got COVID, we got wars, I'm now not making any investments in, no, I won't. He's telling me I've only got 3 minutes left. I thought I had plenty of time. Who's hungry? Don't be. You can wait. Delayed gratification. It'll taste better the more you wait for it. So I sidecar the money, not making investments in new companies, because I don't know if you're going to need any more. So that level of protection contracted the market. Now it's going to be reallocated. We're in a new growth phase. We have become immune to the Oompa Loompa in the big White House. We're trying not to let it affect what we do in Europe. Global healthcare is still a growing market. It hit record levels in 25. It's going to continue to grow. What the VCs now want is not a pilot scheme with Stellantis. They want to know that you can commercially sell your product. That is the first validation point. And you've got to bootstrap, consult, do 2 jobs, Deliveroo and Uber at night to make that happen. There's no easy answer. There isn't. Because no one's taking risk, including me. Am I there? Am I there yet? Now I'll live that one. I've only got 3 minutes left. I've already spoke about this. This is Rodi Fertility, one of my best founders. This is my second best founder. So this is a medical grade rehab suit for stroke patients. This is for fat people that want to get thin. Look pretty same, don't they? Different regulatory pathways. So we pivoted the model in Europe, because they're FDA cleared in the US, not to avoid clinical trials, but to fund the clinical trials without over-diluting the investors in the program. You guys can read this if you get the slides. This is that repetitive slide. Why now? Innovation is a process. Back to this one. This is research to revenue. It's not a pipeline. It's an entire system. And I want to encourage you to build this system. I promise I'll stop. I want to encourage you to build this system. And if you don't know how, I will come and help. Because we have to change the way the whole market moves, not the way each individual country moves. Whew, I'm done. Any questions? Slido? While they're working on that one.
I have one more question.
You can have many as you like, because you know what? Food is waiting.
You mentioned a good idea regarding, I think, the Kia or other corporations, that if you get the money from them, you know, supporting the innovation, they can write it off or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you have a? I have not heard of it. Can you share a bit more about it?
Sure.
And do you have experience on doing this kind of let's say structure or partnership in Central Eastern European region? Because from my experience, I have a feeling that the let's say the branch, you know, the Johnson Controls here in Slovakia does not have the competence or you know, like the rights to do these kind of things. Most of these big decisions are made not here.
No, you're right. So the term is CVC, corporate venture capital, right? The other term is CSR, corporate social responsibility. There are 2 areas. One, you're developing a piece of tech that can be used by this large giant company, and you're asking them to be an equity player in your business, to co-develop. The other is you're doing something impactful in their sector, right? So that could be LKW, the largest European transport company, wanting to reduce its carbon footprint by building a forest in somewhere. That's corporate social responsibility. Or you manufacture a particular component needed by another device, another manufacturer. So they will invest in your tech at a particular valuation, either to market off exclusivity or to create a strategic relationship. So these are ways of managing valuation and getting capital in. Have I done it in Europe? No. But my very first investment was in Rimazov, which is about 2 hours from here.
What was the name?
Rimazov, near Ostrava. Yeah, Czech Republic. So there was a company there called RD Rimazov, RD Rimarovsky Domy. So they build houses. And I got involved in 2011 when they were having some financial troubles. And we created a different market for them of supplying timber frame houses into different countries. What they had in Rimazov was a tech that made the houses very energy efficient. Then we started making investments in other tech that would support the development of a carbon negative house. So we invested in a ceramic coating tech that provided UV insulation. We invented a turbine that sits on the pitch of a roof, a helix turbine, horizontal, that created energy to be fed in the house. And we've just designed our first carbon negative house. That's the only company, and it's mine. Okay, now 80%.
Sounds good, but,
Yeah, but you have to work at it. Central Europe is still lagging behind, right? So if you go to big UK companies, big German companies, big American companies, they have these programs already in place. But no, not in Central Europe, not yet. Yep.
I would just add that Kia has such a program here in Žilina. That's why they have the Kia bicycles and projects like that. They invest into the city, so they're
But usually these projects are like exactly, building a forest or supporting
Social
the
impact,
social impact. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to call like small things, but I don't see like alignment with the building a business. It's more like marketing activities.
It's going to come soon through INOVIA.
Yeah.
But it's difficult because this maybe Kia Foundation is strongly for social innovation, and they hasn't invested to some business. It's against every national rules.
But it doesn't stop you going to the UK or the US or France or Germany. But don't compromise the domicile of your company. We talked about this earlier. Because the money's coming from somewhere else. You have to think of the world as one. Right? And
So let's not limit ourselves just for this
No.
small region.
No. let's not.
Thank you.
Are we done?
Yes,
Yeah.
from my side.
Did you want this back?
We are still streaming, so you can say bye-bye to people.
If I offended anybody that was dialing in, I apologize. Not really. You should have been more interactive, and I wish next time that you attend here. See you soon.
So thank you very much. Shall we spoil the thing for you? I think that life